Hi, I'm Nikita.
And I'm Kelly.
And I'm Justin, and this is our instructional video on how to pick out and set up a campsite.
Before you head out onto your camping trip, you want to consider two things: that you have all the pieces to your tent, and that you know how to set it up. Tents have been around for thousands of years. They have been used by explorers, adventurers, refugees, and emergency situations. Tents are the most basic and important piece of camping equipment.
The basic components of a tent include:
First, you will need a tarp as it serves as a water barrier. You will also need tent poles. Tent poles give the tent rigidity and form. This particular tent consists of 3 long poles which go together like so. What do you think? Next is the tent fly. The tent fly is like a giant raincoat for the tent. It protects the tent from precipitation and can be removed on hot sunny days. Tent pegs are also a necessity. They keep the tent grounded and prevent it from moving or potentially collapsing. There are a couple different types of pegs, but they all serve the same purpose. Last but certainly not least is the tent itself. It is the main shell or body of your shelter. This particular tent is a hexagon shape.
Alright, once you have your tarp placed, acting as a water vapor barrier, you want to take your tent and lay it right on top, the right way facing up. Once that's done, you want to grab your already assembled poles and line them up for one direction first. You begin by slipping the poles through the sleeves in the top of the tent. Some tents use all sleeve, some tents use clips like these here. This tent in particular uses a combination of the both.
Where's the other one?
After they're all slipped in, you then proceed to continue by connecting the clips. Once all of that's completed, you want to pick up the poles and erect the tent, one at a time. And connect the bottom of the pole to the end of the tent. This one in particular has a key that inserts to the bottom of the pole and uses the pole's tension to stay in there. You proceed to continue the whole way around the tent until it's completely erected. Now that the tent is erect, we're going to peg it down to make sure that it keeps its form and doesn't go anywhere. You want to make sure that you peg it down on an angle. Last but not least, you want to put the fly on the tent to make sure that the tent itself can breathe, but it stays out of the weather. When placing your tent fly, make sure that the door matches up with the door on the tent itself. You can strap the tent down by using the cords on the fly itself. These particular ones come with a hook on the end of a bungee cord that you attach to the hooks that you peg it down with. This tent also comes with cords that you peg down to give a little bit of room between the fly and the tent, and it allows water to run off of the fly.
Home sweet home. Now that you know you have everything and are confident in setting up your tent, now it's time to choose the location. When choosing a location, You should be familiar with the area that you're traveling to, as well as bring a map to the location. Safety bearings, as well as back bearings, are very important when traveling out into the wilderness to go camping.
When choosing an area for camp, you want to make sure that the ground is slightly elevated and relatively flat compared to the surroundings. You want to have your campsite sheltered. A good thing to use for shelter would be the brush around and also trees. As you can see, this area has many trees that act as a wind barrier for our campsite.
Your campsite ideally wants to be close to a water source. You don't want to have to go on a huge hike to collect your water, but you need to be at least 200 feet away so the pollutants from your campsite don't affect the water.
Some things you want to avoid will be fallen or dead trees, as they could potentially fall and be a threat to your safety.
This is a really rocky area. You wouldn't want to set up your tent here.
You wouldn't want to set up camp out here in the open, as wind is really a huge factor.
This is a little bit of a hollow in the forest. Seems to be lower elevation than the surroundings. Probably not a good spot because water could run through here if we had rain overnight.
This area would not be ideal to pitch your tent. As you can see, there are many bumps and stumps and fresh vegetation that you would want to avoid. Ideally, you would like to find a spot that has at least 2 large trees so you can string a clothesline across to dry your gear or raise anything off the ground. These look perfect. Where my daisy knot? Excellent. Notice how it is of contrasting color so that nobody will run into it. Before setting up camp, you must consider removing debris such as fallen trees, dead limbs, rocks, or animal droppings. This can all be used as firewood later.
It's all up to your personal preference. Some people might choose to face their tent door towards an open water body, or some people like to wake up to the morning sun. We chose to face our tent the way we did because of these lovely pitcher plants right here.
Pretty big tent.
Where is the door? Oh, yeah.
Dismantling or cleaning up the campsite is just as important or more than setting it up in the first place. When you leave your campsite, you want to make sure that you leave it in better condition than you found it. That might involve you scattering sticks back in place where you found them at first. There, better than we found it.
Some other miscellaneous facts that might come in handy when selecting a campsite are that wind blows down mountains in the nighttime and up mountains in the daytime. Cold air travels down water corridors near mountain streams and settles in low places. It also settles in meadows. And hollows and valleys are the wettest, boggiest, and dampest places to camp.
That concludes our video for how to pick out and set up a campsite.
I hope our tips were helpful.
Bye!